Hello, I'm Chad Larson.
And I'm Barry Berg.
Welcome to Setting the Standard, Conversations with the Berg Larsen Group, a podcast where we discuss questions that are top of mind for upper bracket home buyers and sellers in the Twin Cities metro.
Chad, do you ever get asked, how's the market?
I feel like it's the realtor hello.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone, that's the first thing they ask, how's the market? And I'm never quite sure whether they mean, like, how are you, Chad? Or, like, how am I, as in the person asking the question, right? Like, how's my house value?
Well, it's the kind of question we get asked, like most people are asked about the weather. That's, classic here in Minnesota. The corollary question, we get asked all the time is, well, what's the best time to sell my home or to buy a home? That answer is different for everybody.
Yeah, true. We often sort of hear, and we often say, now is the time, right? If you are thinking about buying or selling, now is the time, because for you, it's always a good time to start if you're thinking about it. There's always something to do.
And it's different for buyers and for sellers. More often than not, we find that buyers haven't really, when they first start looking, or if they think about looking, they haven't really stepped back and thought about, what am I looking for? And more often than not, they haven't really figured out, what can I afford?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and I think, certainly time of the year too, right?
Mm-hmm.
It makes a difference. So there's fall market, spring market, as we head into the fall here, right? I think fall is a good time because there's less competition. And for buyers, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's fewer buyers in the marketplace. So there's the inventory that's available helps the buyers to be more competitive there. And for sellers.
Well, and for sellers, there is this notion, and we often tell our sellers, that the best time to be on the market is in the spring. There are more buyers in the market. But the fall can be a terrific time to market your property. You may be one of the few fresh properties that come to the market. Mm-hmm. And many times buyers are waiting for something fresh to come to the market. However, it also means you've got a shorter period of time in which to achieve a sale, and you also need to make sure that you've got your house ready to market.
Yeah, and I think if you're not ready, right? Sometimes we get the calls, right? Hey, we're thinking about selling our house. And so that fall is a great time. Mm-hmm. Because it allows you to start to percolate, think, what's important to me, what projects I might want to do, and we'll talk a little bit more mm-hmm. about that later. Mm-hmm. It's always a good time to plan.
Well, and I think that's the message that we'd probably say, when somebody asks, how's the market, and I'm thinking about that I might want to sell, I might want to buy. There's never a bad time to start the conversation. And more often than not, we find whether it's buyers or sellers, there's some spade work, some prep work that you need to do in order to be a good buyer, in order to be a good seller. But there really there's almost no bad time to put your home on the market unless you're choosing the holidays. And obviously, that's not a time that very many people are out looking.
No, but people do ask,
yep.
Right? Should I take my home off the market for the holidays? And the answer is no. No, don't take it off. If you're on the market, you want to keep going because others do, right?
Well,
we talk about competition.
And frankly, one of the best examples we can give, and every market is different, but because we've seen so much, I think back to that period 2008 through 2012 when values plummeted. Now, a lot of sellers, there was a tremendous amount of inventory, and a lot of sellers thought, well, nobody's going to look at my house over the holidays, and they'd pull their homes off the market mm-hmm. during November, December. You may remember that in that period, roughly 2008 through 2012, I sat you down and asked, hey, what do you think has been our top producing months? Mm-hmm. They were November and December because we encouraged our sellers to stay on the market,
yep.
And the buyers who were out there wanted to find something, and there was less to choose from.
Well, it's like, when we talk about now is the time and in the planning process, mm-hmm. right? Sometimes people will say, hey, it's the first of the year, my New Year's resolution, and I want to buy this year. So they want to complete that goal by the end of the year, mm-hmm. and they've been waiting, looking, and so yes, I think that was the case back then, and it still continued to be the case today. That that goal-oriented buyer is looking to get into a home before the holidays.
Well, and again, I mean, I think this goes back to the very notion when we talk about, or when we're asked about, how's the market? There are so many subsets to the market, and it depends upon, what kind of product you're looking for, where you feel you might like to find a home. Are you looking for a condo versus a single family? Market does vary a great deal.
Price range.
Price range tremendously so.
From the lower end of the market, it can always be hot most of the time, right? We're seeing multiple offers at the lower end of the market. But the upper end of the market, well, is that Lake Minnetonka? Is that the city of Minneapolis, Edina, western suburbs, eastern suburbs, St. Paul? And each of those, and that's why it makes it so difficult to answer the question, how's the market? Because it really is not only individual to the marketplace itself, but then how's the market in terms of the goals that you're looking to achieve?
And it truly varies so much from year to year. There were, in my early years in the business, there were a couple of summers where I thought, why don't I just take the summer off? Nobody's buying. And then, because that's not my nature, anybody who knows me knows that's not my nature. In fact, then had a couple of gangbuster summers, and the reality is we can't be 100% certain from one year to the next what the market's going to be like. But that's why it makes sense. I mean, you can't second guess the stock market. And so likewise, you really can't second guess the housing market.
No, and I think that's why we try to be consistent about what we do, right? In terms of preparation of the home, getting it ready for the market, and doing those things helps to make sure that depending, or no matter, I should say, the cycle that we're in, at least we've put people in a good position.
Right. I think from the perspective of sellers, there, aside from the holidays that just for obvious reasons aren't as prime a selling period, there's no reason, I feel, for most homeowners to feel like they've got to get their house on the market tomorrow. They're better off making sure they have done those things such that when they do go to the market, their property is presenting itself at its best. And for the most part, we're fortunate that we don't have an economy that looks like it's going to tank any more so than it looks like it's going to appreciate dramatically. So we've got relatively stable markets. So instead, taking your time to be prepared is smart.
Yeah, my favorite term is diligent speed, right? To the idea that, right, you're laughing because you've heard me say it ad nauseum. Because yes, you want to present your home in the best possible light. You want to be a ready buyer, and trying to sort of jump ahead, or it often doesn't work out very well,
no,
right?
It doesn't.
So you do want to be ready.
I think in that same vein, the reality is if you are a buyer, and especially in the fall market, if you are looking at houses, you will find that there are many homes that have been for sale for quite some time. And a lot of those homeowners may be a little bit more negotiable as we approach winter, because in the perfect world, they'd love to call the question. They'd love to have that property sold before the snow flies. So again, really, there's so many different permutations to the market. And one can't answer that with a simple answer for everything.
I think that kind of covers it.
I feel it does as well.
Well, thanks very much. Thanks for staying with us here. So we hope you'll stay for more, and on to the next one.